What if life was not a straight line? What if success did not follow the rules we have always been told to follow? What if, instead of waiting your turn, you could find another way in a hidden path no one talks about? This is the question that sits at the heart of The Third Door by Alex Banayan. And it is not just a book. It is a journey. A real-life adventure of a college student who dared to believe that success was not reserved only for those born into privilege or those who checked all the boxes. It is about a different path. The Third Door. Imagine you are at a nightclub. There are 3 ways to get in. The first door is the main entrance, where 99% of people wait in line, hoping they will eventually get in if they are patient enough. The second door is the VIP entrance, the kind reserved for the rich, famous, or well-connected. But then there is the third door. It is the door where someone sneaks around the alley, climbs over the dumpster, bangs on the kitchen door, and finds their way inside through hustle, creativity, and persistence. That is the third door. And that is exactly how Alex Banayan decided to approach life. At just 18 years old, Banayan was a freshman in college, studying to become a doctor. It was the path his family expected him to take. It was safe. It was respectable. But it was not his dream. He felt restless, curious, and deeply unsure of what he truly wanted. What he did know was that he had questions. Big questions. What does it take to succeed? How did the most successful people in the world launch their careers? And more importantly, could someone like him without money, without connections, learn to do the same? Rather than waiting for answers to come, he made a bold decision. He hacked the Price is Right game show, won a sailboat, sold it, and used the money to go on a 7-year quest to track down some of the world's most iconic people. He wanted to interview them. Not about fame, but about how they started. How they got in the door. This journey took him from awkward hallway run-ins to meetings with people like Bill Gates, Lady Gaga, Steve Wozniak, Maya Angelou, Tim Ferriss, and many more. But this is not just a highlight reel of interviews. It is a book about courage, rejection, confusion, and clarity. About what it feels like to chase something big without knowing where it will lead. It is a book for anyone who has ever felt stuck in life, who has ever looked at success from the outside and wondered, how did they do it? The beauty of The Third Door is that it does not pretend the journey is easy. In fact, Alex Banayan lays bare the anxiety, the awkwardness, the emotional breakdowns, and the personal sacrifices he faced along the way. That is what makes the story so relatable. Because most people do not have a neatly organized resume by age 25. Most people are figuring it out as they go. This book gives you permission to be one of them. At its core, The Third Door is about agency. It is about refusing to sit back and accept that there is only one path. It is about questioning the script you were handed and writing your own. It is about learning that there is always another way even when no one else sees it. In this audiobook summary, brought to you by Books Arena, we will walk you through Banayan's journey in 7 parts. Each part will not just share his experiences, but unpack the deeper lessons that can help you in your own life. You will hear stories of bold decisions, unexpected failures, breakthrough moments, and the mindset shifts that separate those who wait from those who act. Whether you are an entrepreneur, a student, a creator, or simply someone searching for direction, this story will remind you of something vital: success is not about playing by the rules. It is about knowing which rules to break, and having the courage to do it. So get ready. This is not just another success story. This is a call to action. To stop waiting in line. To stop hoping for permission. To start looking for your third door. Let us begin. Part 1, The Spark, Questioning the Default Path. Alex Banayan did not start out as a best-selling author or a world-traveling interviewer. He began, like many of us, as a confused college student. He was 19 years old, sitting in a lecture hall at the University of Southern California, and the question burning in his mind was not about medicine, even though he was on track to become a doctor. It was something deeper, something personal. He wondered, what do I really want to do with my life? It was a question that millions of students ask but rarely act on. He looked around and saw his classmates going through the motions, studying for exams, worrying about internships, and planning out careers they were not even sure they wanted. Everyone seemed to be moving forward because that was what they were supposed to do. But Alex felt stuck. And that feeling is where the story begins. He started asking questions that did not fit into a classroom. How did people like Bill Gates, Steven Spielberg, and Maya Angelou launch their careers? What were their first steps? Did they follow a traditional path? Or did they find another way? These questions consumed him, not just as curiosity but as necessity. He was not looking for motivational quotes. He was looking for a real blueprint, something practical and honest that could show him how to go from uncertainty to impact. But there was a problem. Nobody was teaching this. There were no classes on how to chase your dream. No syllabus for building a meaningful career from scratch. And that is when the idea for the third door took shape. Alex imagined life as a nightclub. The first door is the main entrance, where almost everyone waits in line, hoping that if they follow the rules and stay patient, they will get in eventually. The second door is for the privileged, the VIPs, the celebrities, the connected few. But then there is the third door. It is the door where someone jumps out of line, runs around the back alley, climbs over a dumpster, sneaks in through the kitchen, and finds their way into the club. That third door is not obvious, and it is never easy. But it exists. This metaphor hit him like lightning. And he knew then that he had to find out how the most successful people found their third door. How they broke into their industries, got past the gatekeepers, and created their own path. He decided he would track them down, interview them, and learn directly from the source. But there was just one problem: he was a 19-year-old college student with no connections, no credentials, and no money. Most people would stop there. But instead of giving up, Alex decided to do something wild. He found out that the Price is Right game show was holding an open audition in Los Angeles. He had never been on television before, had no plan, and did not even know the rules of the game. But he saw an opportunity. If he could get on the show, win something valuable, and sell it, maybe that would fund his mission. He studied every episode he could find. He memorized price patterns. He researched winning strategies. And when the day came, he showed up in line with boundless energy and a ridiculous amount of hope. To his own shock, he was called to come on down. He made it to the stage. And by some strange mix of luck, strategy, and belief, he actually won a sailboat. He had never sailed a day in his life. Alex sold the sailboat and used the money to begin his journey. That was the moment his real education began. It was no longer about textbooks and tests. It was about emails, phone calls, rejection, hustle, and uncertainty. It was about figuring out how to get past gatekeepers and how to convince the most influential people in the world to give him a few minutes of their time. But more importantly, it was about transformation. This first part of his story is not just exciting, it is essential. It reminds us that questioning the default path is not a weakness, it is a beginning. We live in a world that pushes us towards stability, predictability, and the comfort of staying in line. But real growth starts when we have the courage to ask, is there another way? Think about your own life. Have you ever been on a path that felt safe but not true to who you are? Have you ever felt like you were doing everything right, but still something was missing? That feeling, as uncomfortable as it is, can be the spark. The beginning of your third door. Alex Banayan's story does not begin with success. It begins with doubt, confusion, and a decision to take a leap. He was not ready. He was not special. He was simply willing to try. And that is what makes the third door real. It is not about genius or talent. It is about effort, belief, and finding the courage to look for the door that no one else sees. In the next part, we will follow Alex as he begins his quest. The first steps are never smooth, and the journey is filled with failure. But within those failures lie the greatest lessons. And that is where the magic begins. Part 2, the quest begins, rejections, hustle, and the power of boldness. After selling the sailboat and deciding to begin his journey, Alex Banayan stepped into a world far more chaotic, uncertain, and humbling than he could have imagined. The vision sounded exciting: travel the country, meet icons, and unlock the secrets of success. But what he quickly realized was that chasing greatness was not as glamorous as it seemed. In fact, it was mostly filled with rejection. Alex started emailing. Hundreds of emails. He wrote to CEOs, entertainers, athletes, best-selling authors, anyone he believed could give insight into how they launched their careers. He hoped for enthusiasm, or at least a response. What he got, mostly, was silence. This is a crucial stage in the third door. Because in real life, before doors open, you usually get 20 slammed in your face. He tried every strategy he could think of. He rewrote subject lines, refined his pitches, and personalized every message. Still, the replies were rare. It was not just frustrating, it was painful. The kind of pain that makes you doubt your idea and yourself. But here lies a lesson: success is not handed to you. It is fought for, slowly, one unanswered message at a time. Alex realized he needed to think differently. So instead of waiting on emails, he began to show up in person. One example stands out: his pursuit of Tim Ferriss, the best-selling author of the 4-Hour Workweek. Alex had read his book and felt strongly that Tim could be a game-changing interview. But Tim did not respond to any emails. So Alex flew to a conference where Tim was speaking. No appointment. No guarantee. Just hope. He waited in the hallway for hours, rehearsing what he would say. And when Tim finally appeared, Alex approached him. Nervous. Sweating. Tim was polite but firm. "I'm not doing interviews right now," he said. Rejection again. But here is the thing: Alex did not let that be the end. A few months later, he tried again, this time with better preparation and a stronger reason. He studied Tim's work deeply and sent a message not just asking for help, but explaining how much Tim's philosophy had already impacted him. Eventually, Tim replied. And agreed. This was not luck. It was persistence, creativity, and respect. Another important moment came when Alex wanted to meet Elliott Bisnow, the founder of Summaries, a private community of entrepreneurs. Alex had no connection to Elliott. No introduction. So what did he do? He found Elliott's email address and sent him one line: "I have to meet you." Elliott did not reply. So Alex sent a second email. Then a third. Then dozens more. Still nothing. Finally, Alex wrote, "If you say yes, I will fly to wherever you are, even if just for 5 minutes." That got Elliott's attention. Elliott replied with the time and place: Park City, Utah, in 2 days. Alex booked a flight with money he could barely afford, landed in Utah, and took a cab through the snow to meet Elliott. It was bold, possibly reckless. But it worked. That meeting became one of the most important turning points in Alex's journey. Elliott did not just give advice, he became a connector. He opened new doors. These moments are powerful because they reveal something deeper than determination. They show that people respond to courage. In a world full of automated messages and shallow outreach, genuine human effort stands out. Let us pause for a second and reflect. How often do we give up after the first rejection? How many times do we convince ourselves that if someone does not reply, it means we are not worthy? The third door teaches the opposite. It says, if they do not answer, try again. If they say no, find another way. Hustle is not just about doing more, it is about doing better. Smarter. Bolder. And yes, it is uncomfortable. Putting yourself out there always is. In the real world, people are busy. They are skeptical. And they have no reason to believe in you until you give them one. That is what Alex Banayan did, not once, but over and over. Every big name he eventually spoke to: Tim Ferriss, Elliott Bisnow, and later on Bill Gates and Lady Gaga, came through this relentless persistence. There is also an important point about preparation. Banayan did not just send generic messages. He studied every person deeply. He learned their work, their values, and their unique stories. When he finally got a response, he was ready not just to ask questions, but to have a conversation that mattered. Real-world example. Think of job hunting. Thousands of people submit the same resumes to the same job boards. But the candidates who stand out are often the ones who follow up, customize their message, show up at a company event, or connect with employees on LinkedIn with purpose. That is third door thinking. Or take a small business trying to land its first clients. Cold emails fail. Ads do not always work. But when a founder reaches out personally, with care and detail, and shows up to pitch in person, it changes the outcome. People invest in people. Not in templates. So part 2 of the third door is all about that uncomfortable middle stage of the journey, the part where nothing seems to work, where rejection feels endless, but where every no is pushing you closer to a yes. It is about learning that asking is a skill, and persistence is a strategy. And when done with honesty, effort, and respect, people begin to notice. In the next part, we will explore how Alex finally landed one of his most important interviews, an encounter with a global icon that tested not only his courage, but his entire belief in this mission. The third door is not just something you find. It is something you create. Part 3, Chasing Icons, the Larry King Encounter and the Power of Mentorship. When Alex Banayan set out on his journey, he believed that if he could just land one big interview, everything would change. He thought that one conversation with a legendary figure would open up all the doors that were shut in his face. What he did not realize at the time was that success does not usually arrive through breakthroughs. It comes through bridges, and sometimes, those bridges come in the form of mentors. Enter Larry King. Larry King was one of the most iconic interviewers of all time. Over 6 decades, he had spoken to presidents, world leaders, celebrities, and authors. For Alex, meeting Larry King was not just about the interview. It was about learning how to ask the right questions, how to become the kind of person who earns the right to sit across from greatness. But getting to Larry King was no easier than any of the others. After all, this was a man with a packed schedule and no reason to spend time with a 20-year-old with no media platform. Still, Alex had learned a crucial principle by this point in his journey: when you believe in your mission deeply enough, you will do what others consider irrational. He found out where Larry King ate breakfast every morning: Nate and Al's Deli in Beverly Hills. That was the first key. King had been going there for decades. Same table. Same time. Alex realized this might be his only shot. So he flew to Los Angeles. Now imagine this: a college kid with no formal introduction, sitting at a table across the room, pretending to eat breakfast, all while working up the courage to walk over to Larry King. Day after day, Alex sat there. Watching. Waiting. Doubting. One morning, after multiple failed attempts, he finally stood up, walked over, and introduced himself. What happened next was not magical. Larry King did not offer him an interview right away. He listened. He was polite. He even gave some quick advice. But the real magic was what followed. Instead of walking away forever, Alex came back again. He kept showing up. Not to bother, but to build a relationship. Eventually, Larry began to recognize him. He began to ask questions of his own. Over time, a relationship developed not based on status or need, but on curiosity and respect. And this is the first major lesson of Part 3, mentors are not people you extract from. They are people you connect with. Not through begging or pushing, but through patience and presence. In time, Larry King agreed to help Alex. He not only sat for an interview, he coached Alex on how to become a better interviewer himself. He offered specific feedback. He encouraged him to dig deeper, to find his voice, to be real. What makes this story special is how human it is. It is not about a sudden stroke of luck. It is about the uncomfortable, often awkward process of earning someone's trust. Larry King did not see Alex as a project, he saw him as a young man trying to find his path. And that, in many ways, is what a mentor truly is: not someone who gives answers, but someone who believes in your ability to find them. This story offers a real-world truth that applies far beyond the context of interviewing famous people. Think of any industry: tech, education, design, medicine. The most valuable growth often happens not in a classroom, but through conversations with people who have walked the road before you. But mentors are not handed out. You do not get one just because you ask. You earn their time through humility, consistency, and effort. Take, for example, someone starting a business. They might reach out to a successful founder hoping for advice. If that message is vague, something like "Can I pick your brain?" it will probably be ignored. But if they say, "I have read your journey, I admire your approach to hiring, and I am struggling with a similar issue, can I ask one focused question?" that is more likely to get a response. It is not about being perfect. It is about being prepared, respectful, and real. Another example: think of students reaching out to professors or professionals in their field. Those who write thoughtful, specific messages, who follow up with gratitude and curiosity, are the ones who get invited to continue the conversation. Back in Los Angeles, Alex's relationship with Larry King became a turning point. It was not just an interview, it was an apprenticeship. It gave Alex the confidence and the craft he needed to pursue the next chapters of his journey. Larry also taught him something subtle, yet profound: the power of listening. In a world obsessed with talking, real connection begins when we listen not just to words, but to what people truly care about. This insight changed the way Alex approached every conversation going forward. It made him better, not just at interviewing, but at learning. So part 3 of the third door is about more than just scoring a win. It is about recognizing that sometimes, success does not come from reaching the top. It comes from sitting at a corner table in a quiet diner, learning from someone who sees a little of their younger self in you. And that more than fame or money is what builds character. The kind of character that opens more doors than you ever imagined. Part 4, the obstacle course, rejection, silence, and the inner game. By this point in his journey, Alex Banayan had already won a sailboat on national television, cold called powerful people, and met one of the most iconic interviewers of all time. It all sounded incredible on the surface. But underneath that excitement was a reality few people talk about: rejection, failure, and long stretches of silence. This part of his journey was not glamorous. It was grueling. Alex had a list of dream interviews, people like Warren Buffett, Bill Gates, and Lady Gaga. He sent emails, made phone calls, knocked on doors, reached out to assistants, agents, managers, and publicists. And for weeks, even months, he heard nothing. Most people believe that rejection is loud, a firm no or a door slammed shut. But what Alex discovered was that the most painful rejection is actually silence. No reply. No feedback. Just an empty inbox. And it is in the silence that most dreams die. In those quiet days, Alex began to question everything. Was this journey foolish? Was he wasting his time chasing people who would never respond? Was the third door even real? This phase, which he later called the abyss, is something nearly everyone encounters when they step off the default path. Entrepreneurs face it when their first dozen investors say no. Artists feel it when no one shows up to their exhibitions. Writers endure it when their pitches are rejected over and over again. It is the emotional tax of doing something different. One of the most personal stories Alex shares from this period involved his efforts to reach Tim Ferriss, the author of The 4-Hour Workweek. Tim was one of Alex's biggest inspirations, a thinker who had redefined success and productivity for a new generation. Reaching him became an obsession. Alex spent weeks studying everything Tim had ever written or said. He looked for patterns, clues, anything that would help him connect in a meaningful way. He drafted emails for hours, only to delete them. He rewrote subject lines over and over. Finally, he sent one and waited. No reply. He tried again. Then again. Still nothing. It was brutal. But instead of giving up, Alex decided to try something completely different. He crafted a message so thoughtful, so specific, and so clearly researched, that it stood out. Not because it was long, but because it respected Tim's time. It showed real effort. That was the email that finally got a response. And here is a powerful truth from that moment: people at the top do not respond to desperation. They respond to preparation. When someone sees that you have done the work, that you are not just chasing fame but pursuing something meaningful, they are more likely to help. But this breakthrough came only after dozens of attempts. And most of the others on Alex's list never replied at all. He had to learn how to live with rejection. This is where the inner game begins. Most people think success is a matter of intelligence or skill. But Alex discovered that resilience, the ability to keep going when it is hard, is the single most important trait. And resilience is not something you are born with. It is something you train. He began practicing mental techniques. He would reframe rejection not as failure, but as feedback. He would remind himself that every no moved him one step closer to a yes. He read about other entrepreneurs who had faced 100 rejections before finding support. He talked to mentors who reminded him that silence is not a verdict, it is just part of the journey. In fact, one of the most powerful tools he developed was what he called the Rule of 10. For every important goal, he would plan on reaching out 10 times before expecting a result. That way, the first few rejections or no responses would not feel like defeat, they would just be part of the process. This kind of thinking is what separates dreamers from doers. And it is not just about chasing interviews. Think about real-world examples. A software developer might apply to 50 companies before getting a job offer. A public speaker may send dozens of proposals before being invited to an event. A small business owner might get ignored for months before landing their first customer. In all these cases, the third door is not unlocked in one dramatic moment. It is pushed open with persistence. Alex also learned to embrace the importance of small wins. When an assistant responded with a polite decline, he still saw it as progress. When a publicist said maybe, that was a crack in the door. Every tiny step mattered. He stopped looking for shortcuts and started focusing on the long game. And slowly, something shifted. His mindset became stronger. He was no longer just chasing people. He was building a story. A story of grit, determination, and a refusal to quit. This part of the third door reminds us that obstacles are not barriers, they are filters. They test how badly we want it. They separate those who are interested from those who are committed. So if you find yourself in a season of silence, keep going. If your messages go unanswered, keep refining. If the world seems to be ignoring you, do not shrink, show up louder, smarter, and with more heart. Because every rejection, every awkward silence, every ignored email is not the end of the road. It is just a sign that you are walking the right one. And the third door? It is still out there. You just have to be willing to knock again and again until someone finally lets you in. Part 5, Breaking Through, the Power of Bold Moves and Unlikely Allies. After facing wave after wave of silence, rejection, and doubt, Alex Banayan stood at a crucial turning point. He could have easily walked away, like most people do when doors remain shut for too long. But instead, he chose something very few are willing to do. He doubled down on his belief that persistence and creativity would eventually break through. In this part of his journey, we see what happens when preparation meets courage. It is where all the groundwork, all the hours of research, planning, and emotional struggle finally begin to open doors, not because the system changes, but because Alex changed how he approached it. One of the most vivid stories from this chapter of the book is how Alex finally landed a conversation with Elliott Bisnow, the founder of Summit series. Summit was not just a conference, it was a private gathering of some of the world's most influential entrepreneurs, investors, and creatives. Think of it like a modern-day Davos, but younger, riskier, and much more entrepreneurial in spirit. Alex had heard about Summit and knew that getting into that circle could help him grow his project faster. But again, the challenge was access. These were people who typically responded only to friends, investors, or established connections. Not college students sending cold emails. So Alex tried something different. He decided to fly across the country to show up uninvited at one of the Summit events. He had no ticket. No invitation. No plan. Just a belief that being on the ground gave him a better chance than waiting behind a screen. This was one of his boldest moves. And at first, it seemed ridiculous. He found himself in a hotel lobby, carrying a folder filled with his project notes, unsure of what he would say or do. He felt out of place, overwhelmed, and on the verge of walking away. But then, a small opportunity opened, a conversation here, an introduction there. Slowly, he started meeting people. And eventually, someone introduced him to Elliott Bisnow. What followed was not a formal pitch or a polished presentation. It was a real conversation. A human moment. Elliott did not hand him access to all the interviews Alex wanted, but he gave him something more valuable: guidance. He told Alex something powerful: you have to be so good they cannot ignore you. But until then, keep knocking. Keep showing up. That advice became a guiding principle for Alex. This chapter in his story is full of these pivotal moments where bold action and personal connection outweigh strategy. One of the clearest lessons is that most people underestimate the value of showing up physically. In a digital world where everyone sends emails and pitches over the internet, actually being present face-to-face makes a huge difference. Think about it. How many job applicants stop at an online application? How many entrepreneurs try to land investors without ever attending events where those investors actually go? How many artists try to sell their work through email alone? Being in the room, even when you do not feel ready, is often the most underrated competitive advantage. Another key theme in this part is the role of unlikely allies. Throughout his journey, Alex encountered people who were not at the top of the chain but held the keys to the next step. Assistants, coordinators, interns people often overlooked became the very ones who opened new paths. For example, while trying to reach Warren Buffett, Alex realized that speaking to Buffett's direct office would never work. But if he could get through to someone on the team who understood his mission and trusted his sincerity, he had a shot. This mirrors real-world success stories everywhere. Take Hollywood, for instance. Many actors got their big breaks not from directors or producers, but from assistants who passed along headshots or audition tapes. In startups, early-stage founders often get connected to investors not by cold calls, but through interns or junior associates who believe in their idea. This teaches us a vital truth: never underestimate anyone. You never know who will open the next door. Alex also leaned deeper into authenticity. He stopped trying to impress and started trying to connect. He learned that people respond more when they feel like you truly believe in what you are doing, not when you try to sound smarter or more important. And this is where the real transformation begins. He was no longer just a curious college student on a mission. He had become a young entrepreneur learning to navigate high-stakes relationships, build trust, and think creatively about how to move forward without traditional resources. One of the most powerful quotes from this chapter is when Alex reflects on the moment he realized something crucial: the third door is not something you find. It is something you create. By taking bold risks, by staying grounded in his mission, and by treating every person as someone who mattered, Alex started to carve out his own path, not by waiting for someone to give him permission, but by earning his place at the table. So what does this mean for you? It means that the breakthroughs you are waiting for might not come through the front door. They may not come from a resume or a formal pitch. They may come from a chance meeting, a bold action, or a meaningful conversation that you could never have scripted. It means that even when you are exhausted, showing up matters. That being vulnerable, honest, and prepared often makes more impact than being perfect. And most importantly, it means that success is not just about knocking. It is about finding ways to be unforgettable when the door opens even slightly. Because the third door is not given. It is earned one bold move at a time. Part 6, The Inner Journey, Doubt, Burnout, and Rediscovering Purpose. By now, Alex Banayan had traveled thousands of miles, sent hundreds of emails, and poured his heart into chasing people who were changing the world. He had snuck into exclusive events, made bold cold calls, and even scored interviews with some of the most iconic names in modern history. From Quincy Jones to Larry King, from Tim Ferriss to Steve Wozniak, his journey looked like a dream from the outside. But internally, Alex was unraveling. Behind every photo with a famous figure was a moment of anxiety. Behind every successful meeting was a string of failures, rejections, and crushing self-doubt. In this chapter, the spotlight shifts inward. This is not about strategies or tricks anymore. It is about what happens when your dream starts to feel like a burden, and your passion begins to drain you. Alex was still in his early 20s when it all started to catch up with him. His friends were finishing school, getting jobs, and settling into predictable routines. He, on the other hand, was constantly in motion. There was no salary. No degree to show. No promise that all this effort would ever lead to something solid. The truth was, he was exhausted. There is a moment when you have been chasing something for so long that you forget why you started. Alex hit that wall hard. He had achieved more than most people his age could imagine, but he was lonely. He was broke. He felt like he was constantly proving himself to everyone: his parents, the world, even himself. And the joy that had fueled his journey began to fade. This is a crucial part of every real journey toward success. Burnout does not only happen to people who fail, it often strikes hardest at those who try the hardest. Those who keep going when others stop. Those who say yes when others retreat. And in a world that glorifies hustle, very few people talk about the emotional cost. Alex describes sitting alone in hotel rooms, questioning if it was all worth it. Was chasing Bill Gates and Maya Angelou really going to make a difference? Was this mission still about helping others find their path, or had it become a way to validate his own worth? One night, in particular, became a breaking point. He had just faced another rejection, and it hit him harder than usual. His chest felt tight. He could not sleep. His mind raced with thoughts of quitting, of going back home, of walking away from the whole project. But then something happened. He began to write. Not a pitch, not a strategy memo, just raw, personal reflection. He began journaling honestly, with no filter, and for the first time in a long while, he began to reconnect with why he started all this. It was never about fame. Never about being seen. It was about questions, real, deep questions. How do people find their way when they have nothing to lean on? How do they trust themselves when no one else does? This writing practice became a lifeline. By putting his thoughts on paper, he began to clear the fog. He remembered that his mission was not just to collect stories, but to share them in a way that would help others feel less alone. That clarity gave him strength. In this part of the book, we also see the value of mentorship. During this period of burnout, Alex leaned more into the wisdom of those who had already walked difficult paths. People like Tim Ferriss reminded him that burnout is not a sign of failure. It is a signal. A message from your body and soul that something needs to change. He began to slow down. He stopped chasing every opportunity and focused on depth over speed. He started caring less about how many interviews he could get, and more about how meaningful each conversation truly was. In real-world terms, this is the shift from sprinting to marathon running. Every creative, every entrepreneur, every passionate student eventually has to learn that sustainability matters more than speed. You can only sprint for so long. If you do not pause to breathe, to think, to rest, you will collapse. Burnout does not discriminate. It affects athletes, artists, leaders, and dreamers. It often strikes when you are close to a breakthrough. That is why learning to manage your energy, not just your time, is essential. Another key insight from this chapter is that isolation intensifies burnout. Alex realized that he had built a journey around independence, but he had not built enough community. Once he began to reconnect with friends, share his struggles openly, and lean on his support system, his energy returned. He was still on a difficult path. Nothing had magically resolved. But now, he had a better compass. A clearer why. A deeper sense of what really mattered. In life, we are often told to keep pushing. But sometimes, the strongest thing you can do is to pause, reflect, and recalibrate. Alex's inner transformation reminded him that the journey to success is not just about getting in the room, it is about being whole when you get there. And that begins by listening to yourself, not just your goals. So if you are chasing something big, and you feel tired, uncertain, or even broken, that is not a sign that you are failing. It is a sign that you are human. Like Alex, you may need to take a step back to see forward. Because the third door is not just about hustle. It is also about healing. And healing, too, is part of the way in. Part 7, The Final Door, Lessons from the Journey and the Power of Boldness. After 7 years, countless rejections, incredible interviews, emotional highs, and personal lows, Alex Banayan finally stood at the end of the journey he had once only imagined as a college freshman with a stolen textbook and a restless soul. The mission had begun with one burning question: how do the most successful people in the world launch their careers? Now, he had answers, but more importantly, he had perspective. This final part of the book does not end with fireworks or fame. It ends with clarity. It is about the deeper understanding that success is never as neat, glamorous, or formulaic as it looks from the outside. And yet, it is also more achievable than we think if we are willing to walk through the third door. One of the final and most symbolic moments of Alex's journey was his meeting with Bill Gates. This was the ultimate goal, the interview he had dreamed about for years. Getting to Gates had taken patience, persistence, and luck. But when the moment finally came, it was not just about the interview, it was about who Alex had become to get there. And that is the final lesson: it is not the people you meet or the moments you capture that define you. It is the person you become in the pursuit. What he found most striking about Gates was not his intelligence, though that was undeniable, but his focus. Gates did not try to be everywhere or do everything. He had learned, early in life, to concentrate deeply on the few things that mattered most. That, Alex realized, was a core pattern he had seen again and again. Whether it was Lady Gaga practicing obsessively in underground clubs, or Steve Wozniak building circuit boards in his bedroom, or Tim Ferriss rewriting chapters over and over before publishing, every person he met had developed a kind of tunnel vision. Not blind ambition, but intentional effort. They did not just work hard, they worked smart, with purpose. But perhaps the most powerful discovery of all was that almost none of them had followed a traditional path. The myth of the straight line: go to school, get a degree, work hard, and success will follow, was almost never true in reality. Every icon Alex met had taken detours. They had faced moments of deep uncertainty. Many had started from nothing. What separated them from others was not resources. It was resourcefulness. Take Larry King, for example. Before he was a household name, he was just a kid from Brooklyn with a dream of being on the radio. No one gave him a blueprint. He chased every opportunity. He accepted small roles, odd jobs, anything that brought him closer. Eventually, he got his shot. And when the moment came, he was ready. This is what Alex calls the third door mindset. It is about not waiting in line, not expecting permission, and not being afraid to ask. It is about boldness. Not recklessness, but courageous initiative. Because no one is going to hand you the life you want. You have to build it. This boldness is not limited to entrepreneurs or celebrities. It shows up in everyday people. In the single mother who starts a business from her kitchen table. In the high school student who builds a community project in their town. In the artist who puts their first painting online despite fear of judgment. Every act of boldness creates possibility. Alex realized that the third door is not just for a few. It is open to anyone willing to knock long enough, push hard enough, and believe deeply enough that there is a way in. But this journey also teaches another lesson: success is not the destination. Meaning is. The people Alex interviewed were not just chasing titles or trophies. They were building things that mattered to them. Their success was a byproduct of passion, perseverance, and purpose. For anyone listening to this audiobook from Books Arena, this is the moment where it becomes personal. Ask yourself, what is your third door? What dream have you put on pause because it seemed too far away? Who told you that you were not ready, not good enough, or not connected enough? And most importantly, are you willing to try anyway? Alex Banayan started this journey as a teenager who knew nothing about publishing, interviewing, or entrepreneurship. He had no roadmap. But he had curiosity. He had hustle. And he had the audacity to try. That is what the third door demands. Not perfection. Not genius. But effort. And the belief that you do not have to wait your turn. In the final pages of the book, Alex does not offer a checklist. He offers an invitation. To take the first step. To send the message. To knock on the door. Even if it does not open the first time or the 10th, keep trying. Because somewhere out there, the door is waiting. Not just for someone. For you. And in that spirit, as we close this journey through the third door, remember, success is not reserved. It is earned. Not by luck, but by boldness. Now, the question is no longer is it possible. The question is, are you ready to find your door and walk through it? Let that be your beginning. As we reach the end of the third door, one thing becomes clear: success is not a straight path reserved only for the privileged few. It is a journey filled with uncertainty, setbacks, breakthroughs, and above all, bold action. Alex Banayan's story is a reminder that waiting in line is not the only option. There is always a third door, hidden, difficult, and often intimidating but real. Through interviews with icons like Bill Gates, Larry King, and Lady Gaga, Alex shows us that the most successful people did not follow traditional rules. They made their own. They trusted their instincts, leaned into fear, and kept pushing even when the world told them to stop. So as you walk away from this book, ask yourself, what door are you standing in front of? Are you waiting in line, or are you ready to look for your own third door? Remember, the future does not belong to those who wait. It belongs to those who create, persist, and dare to knock even when the door seems locked. Thank you for joining us on this journey with Books Arena. Keep seeking, keep knocking, and keep believing in your power to find your own way in.